Hello, and welcome back to Coffee and Uche-Okeke. I'm your host, Salma Uche-Okeke. Today, we are honored to have with us Professor Ikwuemesi, an associate professor in the Department of Fine and Applied Arts at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Professor Ikwuemesi is a multifaceted figure in the art world, serving as a painter, art critic, ethno-aesthetician, and cultural entrepreneur. He is the founder of the Pan-African Circle of Artists and the emeritus president of the Art Republic, dedicated to advancing African art and culture. His research spans ethno-aesthetics with a focus on Igbo and Ainu arts, and he has held prestigious fellowships including with the American Council of Learned Societies and the French Institute for Research in Africa. Currently, he also coordinates the Deaf Studies Association of Nigeria, showcasing his broad intellectual interests. Welcome, Professor Ikwuemesi.
Thank you very much, Salma.
It's such a pleasure to finally relate to you one-on-one. I've heard so much about you, but we'll get back to that. Can you share with us your journey in the world of art? Because you sound quite interesting. And what inspired you to pursue both the creation and scholarly study of art?
Thank you. I was enrolled at the University of Nigeria in 1987 to study art. I wanted to study some other things like political science, French language, two other things, but I seemed to read fine and applied arts before I became a professor. That is a story. Inspired by some of the things done by Uche-Okeke and some of his associates, disciples, colleagues. The Pan-African Circle of Artists you mentioned came in 1991. When I was still a student, we founded that association as students, help of some lecturers, done some work on Uli, but trying to take it away from the high arts, because we figured we considered we may not be effectively saved hands of hybrid tower artists. In 2003, with the encouragement of Bureau data, some funding from then Benjamin Gallery or Benjamin Center for Culture and Development, I was able to return to the field and go to my own village, connect with the village women to encourage them for interior decoration, textile, because you cannot continue to wait for mud walls.
How did that go? Going back to work with these Nri women and trying to see how they can use new materials.
Yeah. So since then we have tried to do that. Then I've done my own work. Tell people that Uli is just a part. My interest is just a part of what I have done. But interestingly, what I intend to carry on till my last breath, because I see it as a divine project that we as Igbo people should embrace. We need to save that and ensure that it continues to renew.
It continues to evolve. Yes. I was asking you, sir, your experiment, what has it yielded? These village women, since they can no longer do the mud thing as such, using new materials and new surfaces to put these designs. What has come out of that?
Well, it's been an off and on thing because of the problem of funding. It has not been really continuous, very well sustained, but we have refused to back down. But I'm excited. I see the technology and all that. We are thinking that at some point, the technology will have to come to the rescue so that textile, for instance, you don't have to keep dyeing and blocking and do the party. You can take some of these things and put them on drinking glasses, on cutlery, on plates and so on without much human
intervention. That's really forward thinking. I find your research on ethno-aesthetics really, really, really important. And I would like you to talk more about this, please.
Well, thank you. I have already mentioned my interest in Uli, which is a very strong example of ethno-aesthetics in this part of the world. My interest goes back to my time as an undergraduate when I wrote my BA project on Obiora Udechukwu Chika Nyako and Ray Obeta. Then subsequently, 2003, I was introduced to the women in Enrique, people I call classical women painters. And we worked together on a shrine in Enrique. I was also introduced to Martina Okafor in Agolo. Help them. Also, I found some women in parts of Enugu State. So try to help them to revive their interest in spite of the challenges of what you may call religious or even Pentecostalist nihilism. And since then, with some funding from the United States Embassy in Nigeria, the ambassador's self-help grant, we were able to run workshops over the year. My wife is also an artist. We tried to develop craft because we thought that when Uli was really in vogue in Igbo land, it was not an elitist thing. So I think personally that high art and the museums and galleries, as we know them, do not really have the capacity to save Uli from extinction. So what we did and we are still doing is to use craft, or what you may call econo art, that is grassroots art, to try to re-engineer some contemporary interest in Uli. Art is never solely universal. Art is a universal and multiversal experience. So we cannot throw away our own because we want to be more Western than American. So for me, it's about who we are and what we can offer to the world from our little corner, part of the dangers of the totalizing essence of totalization.
You did pick on something that had to do with, apart from the changes in modern life, the aspect of Christianity, how it has significantly impacted the Igbo traditions. Could you please elaborate on how these historical forces have shaped contemporary Igbo art and why Igbo artists often avoid realism in their work?
Well, from time, classical Igbo art avoided realism in their work because people did not want to deal just with the surface. Many artists of, native societies, or what you may call the fourth world, did not want to meddle with realism. They sought to go inner, beyond the realism, beyond the surface, to deal with the soul. And that also connects with medicine, for instance, where the doctor was not concerned just with the body. You had to treat body and soul. The artists were concerned not just what they saw on the surface, but trying to look at the spirituality, the duality of being, taking the two as they go. And that is also what you found the women doing, not just trying to draw human being, but essentializing the subject, taking the essence and using it to address all sorts of issues, enormity of issues, like modern poets will do, using economy of means to address, to achieve enormity of meaning. So that is what we saw in the work of these women, and some of us have tried to adapt, of course, starting from the time the experiments of Uche-Okeke, even before it came to Nsukka, and meeting other like minds like Anyako and Udechukwu, and somehow we have tried to keep the flag flying, the flag of Ethno-Aesthetics, without necessarily localizing or parochializing our own visual artistic interests.
It's quite obvious that you have been involved in a lot of research on this ethno-aesthetics, and you have also been involved in arts as well. Is there a comparison between the two that you found fascinating? For instance, what initially drew you to that other culture? What are some key insights you have gained from your studies?
Yeah, that's interesting because after my master's degree in 1999, I said I wasn't going to do a doctorate because I didn't see personally why an artist will need a doctorate degree to be able to create art. Although I was writing historically, critically, I didn't have a degree in art history either. So when I went to Japan, I wanted to study contemporary Japanese artists in comparison with selected Nigerian artists. But on a certain day, I went into the library at the National Museum of Ethnology where I was having my sabbatical, and I saw a book on the Ainu. Reading through, that is the aborigines of Japan. Reading through the book, I saw they had similar culture with the Igbo people, life cycle, system of justice, marriage, and all that. And I decided I thought it was going to be interesting to do a comparison of Igbo and Ainu culture and art. So that is where I started, and I did a comparative study. Interestingly, I have published 2 articles or so, about 3 articles on my experience studying that culture. So when I returned in early 2009 from Japan, when I came back to Soka, I now thought I should register formally and do my study in a comparative research on Igbo and Ainu art. And not only that, try to incorporate elements of Ainu art into my work, because at times you see resemblance with Igbo Uli, especially in terms of linearity, and also in terms of being concerned with the essence, the juxtaposition of positive, and all that, and all those elements in the two. So as an artist and a writer, beyond my writing, tried to take a few elements of Ainu art and marry them.
That is really fascinating. Is this research still ongoing, or are you done? But of course, the art you produce out of that research, it should be ongoing.
Well, the research is still there. I still try to read up 1 or 2 things, especially since I'm not living in Japan. For the Igbo aspect, it's part of my lived experience. It's not that I'm yet to publish my thesis. I hope to publish that as a book for the benefit of people and artists. As for art, well, it's something we have to do. An artist does not retire. So for as long as I'm alive and making art, I don't think I'm going to depart from my interest in aesthetics. Readily, what I find available to me at my disposal is Uli and then the I experience. So I can say that the marriage of Uli and I will certainly continue in my work.
Certainly continue. You're also the founder of the Pan-African Circle of Artists. It would be interesting to find out what the primary goals of this organization is and how it has contributed to the promotion and development of African art.
I must say that the founding of the Pan-African Circle of Artists in 1991 was a kind of reaction to exhibiting artists. We were students then, and we were thinking of creating a forum that we could work together and exhibit. These students from the University of Nigeria and students from the one Institute of Management and Technology. And let me say I was the one who led the initiative, who made the moves. And from Soka, we went to Enugu and found like minds who were able to work with us. Of course, it was funny because we were students and we were gesturing at Pan-Africanism. At that time, I hadn't read Nkrumah in the Pan-Africanists, but we felt this need to reach out to artists in other parts of Africa. The internet was not there at that time. Had to write letters and wait for months for people to respond. But we managed to make it. Well, if you remember, in those days, it was easier to go to London than to go to Accra, for instance. So we wanted to see how we could use art to break some of these barriers. So we came together. Gradually, some full-fledged artists joined us. I remember people like Chris Abuba will come to the meetings, Isaac Ohene, who was from Ghana. Some of my art teachers in the secondary school joined. So gradually it grew. So between 91 and 2001, we had matured enough to be able to receive grants from institutions like Prince Claus Fund, Netherlands, a Commonwealth Foundation, and a few other organizations. So we actually undertook cross-country tours, what we called overcoming maps. Taking vehicles from Lagos, driving away to Ghana, Burkina, Mali, Ivory Coast, and the rest of them. In fact, in 2004, January, February, we had 45,000 euros from the Prince Claus Foundation to make a travel. That was perhaps the highest point that Overcoming Maps project published, 160 something page report. It was conceived as a tool for bringing African artists together. Lately, we haven't done much in recent years, but we will resume. I think we're going to, because of the reality on the ground now, it's not the same as the time we started. We hope to do old things in new ways as soon as we're able to resume our activities.
I remember that you mentioned that your involvement with Uche-Okeke to me at some point. Can you tell us the nature of that involvement and what made it stand out for you and what made it significant?
When we came in here, the name Uche-Okeke was all over the place, but unfortunately, we didn't meet him. I think with the Ndele issue, he was supposed to come back, but I think he was so displeased that he didn't want to return. As we speak today, there is a lecture in honor of Frank Ndele. I think over the years, the university has been trying to make up for some of the wrongs of those years, but that is by the way. When we came in, I remember one day, Uche-Okeke came into the studio. They came with him, Professor Laono. He said, "Who is this?" We said, "No." He said, "Okay." He stood for a while, looked around the studio at our work and went. It was not until 2003 I was inspired to see if I could organize champion his 70th birthday, and I reached out to Peter Ray, late Peter Ray, who was then running his gallery, which was relatively new in Lagos, and he saw it as something that could be done. So we put up a proposal together, came to Nemo, met Professor Oka. He was positively disposed. So that was when I was able to meet with him face to face. We did that event. I edited a book, Against All Odds.
Is it Trump's of Senate?
Yes, yeah. Okay. People who were directly or indirectly connected to him. All of them held having us. And then I think 2008, when I was in Japan, there was an effort by Peter Red to have another exhibition to mark his 75th birthday. We kept working until I returned. That project was on until July when Peter Red was murdered. And I was left with the burden of having to publish the book. Republish the book, which had been remixed.
That particular exhibition did not end up holding.
No, it didn't. It didn't hold because eventually people left, and then things went away somehow. And eventually, I think it was in 2010 that Rashid Badamosi came into the picture. We were discussing, and I said there was this book that Tare had left behind. We had finished and asked how much, and he opted to buy up 350 copies. So with that money, we could get the book published, and we did. I think he had to use it as part of an exhibition he mounted in Ikorodu or something, I think.
Yes, there was an exhibition at the Grillo Pavilion at some point. He was actually having separate exhibitions for members of the Zaria Art Society, one after the other. He did one for Uche-Okeke at that time. So maybe it was around the same time when he picked up interest in the book, because I don't believe Peter was alive by the time that exhibition.
No, Peter had died 2 years before. That was the only way the book was published. What I hope to do, probably to issue it digitally in the next few months.
I'll tell you something. We lost track of that book with Peter's demise, that we didn't now have any discussion with you. So it is a good thing that we are starting these discussions again and that we're able to continue from where you had stopped.
So you will now say there are two books. The Triumph of Seller. When Peter died, we couldn't lay hands on copies. I know I got about 50 or 100 copies, complimentary copies, when it was published. But by the time Peter was gone, we went to their family house in Enugu. We couldn't find copies. I don't know what happened. In fact, there was even another book published on the rediscovery of tradition. We couldn't find copies. Of course, this other one, the remixed book, Reading Uche-Okeke, had not been printed before he died, so you couldn't trace that to his family. But I think it will be nice to have kind of a soft version that people can access one way or the other. I know that so much has been written about Uche-Okeke, but everything I think is still
Very
relevant
important and relevant.
for researchers. Yeah.
Something that we really must go on with, which brings me to my next question, discussing regarding Peter Are, because we must agree that this is an important person in the narrative between us, basically. He's no longer with us, but we'll continue to acknowledge him and the work he did in partnership with Pendulum Gallery for Uche, and of course, in partnership with you. And that is why you're an essential part of that legacy, since you were the one that introduced Are to Okeke and supported him in this endeavor. We need to explore this connection further.
Yeah. Well, for me, Peter Are was calling me a flash in the pan of art promotions in Nigeria, but I think he did so much. Well, initially, I must confess that we helped to prop up Pendulum. At the point we met him, write some of the enabling literature blueprint that will help him to run a more professional gallery. And without being tribalist, I think he was able to showcase a number of Igbo artists, Uche-Okeke, for instance, Obiora Udechukwu, myself. He was even very supportive of the Pan-African Circle of Artists and a host of other things. We were able to get him to have a sense of social commitment beyond the normal gallery of making money, selling art and all that. But he was able to see the need, because we know beyond art marketing, a kind of hand-to-mouth operation. So I think it was a big loss that left the way, because we know it remains poor. It's one of the mothers in Nigeria, because we know so many that we are not, that was not really resolved today. Up till now, nobody knows what happened to him. All you hear is that 7 people, whatever, came in and they stabbed him, they took money, they said we are going to kill you, so that painful to family. And nobody has said exactly what happened in the jungle that we live in. And I tried to do memorial lecture the much I could. I didn't get much support from friends and family, I must say that. The first one, the family supported. After that, I remember the second one, I had to invite Evelyn Nicodemus all the way from London. I did come and talk. I paid airfare, I paid hotel, I did everything. Luckily, I had some research, a little fund for research. I was able to put the bill, then about 4 to 500,000 naira from my pocket. And people thought I was making money. I did that. How could I make money from the dead? It was just, I felt that this person needed to have this recognition. As little as it may be, it's not somebody you should forget like that. So we did that. I did episodes of that lecture and I stopped, because it was beginning to seem like the outsider crying more than the bereaved. But I have those 10 episodes and I hope they can be published in a small collection, an anthology.
And as a reference to that light, however short it was, because there's one thing that I have often thought about that I never really got to know. How did Peter go into the arts?
He was a banker. He had a relationship about the owners of Nimbus Gallery initially, apparently from the same town, from Onitsha. But I think he was influenced by what he saw at Nimbus to go on to establish his own gallery. I think also he was personally interested in art.
I got that impression.
But it was his pendulum can be rightly described as a child of the Nimbus experience.
His interest in the art was actually quite apparent. And like you said, it wasn't just the case of marketing art. It was the case of having a passion for these artists and putting himself and his gallery out there to help to develop them, to put them out there and give them what he felt was rightfully theirs. I mean, that was the impression I got. And it wasn't like myself and him ever sat down to discuss these things. These are some of the important things about Peter Are and Pendulum Gallery that should not be forgotten. Not because it involved Uche-Okeke, but he was definitely someone that was ready to facilitate the art community from any angle that he could. And I think we must find how to make it project him. And you're a very key person with this concern. And I hope we'll be able to put heads together and see what to do. Maybe starting from those episodes that you've put together and see what can be done.
It would be glad to say such a thing. Now, sorry to say that Peter Ray was not well treated in death by the art community, friends and family. I have to say that.
He always had such a large heart. He did.
Yeah.
He did.
But it's also characteristic Nigerian, now even Igbo, if we have to bring it down to that level. Once somebody is gone, he's gone. We don't have the capacity, the habit to memorialize and honor people. Just garbage in, garbage out, and it's such a sad thing. I thought that over the years, after the death, that the family would have been able to initiate a kind of something that would enable them to remember him more professionally time to time. It didn't happen. And like I said, we have a proverb in Igbo that when you keep crying over the death of the ego, look as if what happened to it.
From my point of view, it's not really the family, because the family may not have the professional insight. It should come from the art community. And we take responsibility at the Uche-Okeke Legacy that Peter Are and the Pendulum Gallery were an essential part of our legacy for however short that period. Because I remember that when Dad, I mean, that's just an example of how forward-thinking he was. When Peter came on board, a lot of artists of his generation, they wouldn't have worked with him because they would have seen him as coming from outside the sector. They would have seen him as that very glide kind of young man that is not the kind, typically what they had been used to. But Uche-Okeke saw something in Peter. And it was years after that I even actually met Peter. And I saw it also. I mean, I went for the exhibition, the 70th exhibition, but we were not the key players there. During that period when he was already ill, a lot of artists of his generations were like, why was my dad dealing with Peter? But we were not going to change anything because he decided by himself to deal with Peter. And it was that period of his falling sick that gave me the opportunity to get to know Peter a bit better. He made it a point of duty to fly all the way to Abuja to see my dad immediately when he heard that he had been brought to Abuja. And after that, he made it a point of duty to keep coming to check on him. And so we said, keep the works that are with you in the meantime, because these works were handed over to you by Uche-Okeke himself for the exhibition, and he let him keep holding it. It was some years after the exhibition that he fell sick, a few years afterwards. We shouldn't forget people that have been involved in building. We shouldn't just forget them so easily. Yes, and so these are part of the reasons why I was looking for you, because I saw how you struggled to make sure that you gave him his place within the art community.
Yeah, I think it's important to see how Peter can be memorialized and honored.
We have to, yeah. At that time when you came, when you got more involved because of this, your project with Peter, what was it that stood out for you with Uche-Okeke?
Well, for me, it was like kind of the encounter was able to fill a gap for me, my school experience, because I was able to meet Uche-Okeke firsthand. I remember on one or two occasions, I had to put a few students in Tojo Salon car, and we came all the way, but to also give them that opportunity to meet him personally. And some of them still remember people like Gerald Chukwuma. Still remember today that we made that kind of trip. So for me, having not met him here by 1987 when I came, seen him 2003, 2002 to 3, 4, and upwards, was quite memorable and remarkable for me. You remember when he died, I happened to be the head of department here, and we did an event. Not sure the family came, but necessary that we should do that to remind us that he was here, that he did so much to establish not just the department, but what we call Soka Art School.
Yeah, and that's one thing that stood out during his burial. I think that if you're talking about what is the significance of involvement with Uche-Okeke, I think it would be how he was open to anybody. It didn't matter. Anybody could access him if you wanted to, and he would give you that time. And it became very obvious when he passed on how many people from the art community came from all different sides, that anywhere they could come out from, to come to honor him at his death. I think that has to do with someone that is able to build bridges. And I think that's a very important thing that we must also try to encourage in our thriving community as we go on.
Maybe I should ask you a question at this point. How is our position now to continue to flag of Uche-Okeke flying? I've not been there probably in a decade or less. I can see that there has been quite a serious upgrading and all that. But in terms of the system and philosophy of what Uche-Okeke represents, how is the institute?
It took almost his whole life before we could get the institute properly legally registered, because there was changing governmental requirements. We needed to have that educational component in it. So it was not until 2014 that Asele Institute was properly registered as a company limited by guarantee. And so to continue this legacy, we do have, after due consultation, we have two organizations that are continuing with Uche-Okeke's legacy. It became important to have that. A family holding company called the Professor Uche Legacy Limited, which is also a commercial entity. And then, of course, the Asele Institute, which is a not-for-profit. And so these two organizations work hand in hand, fully embedded with Uche-Okeke's blueprint, because he left, I don't know, but he wrote down everything. So that we have the blueprint to do this work. And then the matter is, from what point are you starting? What are the low-hanging fruits you can start from? Because it is a whole lot. And there was a need also to position, like you said, Asele Institute such that it can attract the right kind of attention that it requires. And that meant putting in those structures, both legal and financial structures in place, so that it can deal with other multi-organizations of its type globally. And that has also been a work in progress. Although Uche-Okeke was synonymous with Asele Institute in his time, his name is still higher than Asele Institute. There's that branding work we're doing to gradually bring Asele Institute as an entity of its own, because Asele Institute is supposed to be larger than Uche. So it's all gradual. I mean, he died in 2016, and by next year it will be 10 years. But you find that 10 years is a very short time to achieve that much. But what we have been able to do so far is that positioning you're talking about gradually, in terms of the structures, in terms of putting a board in place, in terms of working on a unified brand for the two organizations. So at the front, we have one image, in terms of keeping the brand in the public view, in terms of gradually being able to utilize the new technologies and infrastructures that are in place. As an active member of the Department of Fine and Applied Arts of the University of Nigeria, it would be insightful to get your views on the impact of Uche-Okeke's vision and teachings in the advancement of the natural synthesis movement and the evolution of the Nsukka school.
The legacy of Uche-Okeke is still there. It has gone down from one generation of artists to another, from this of his time, colleagues and all that, down to some people who have gone before us. The essential thing we need to take away from natural synthesis is what you may call localization or localism within the meal of post-coloniality. One needs to find his or her compass through a judicious combination of local and global experiences. That is what natural synthesis was all about, using what you have to get what you need, using what you have to address the world without losing your own essence in so-called globalizing world. And that is what Nsukka School has been. Some people talk about the new Nsukka School, and I often argue that I don't see anything new. What I see is a continuum from the 1970s until now. You can talk about mutations, you can talk about evolution of the same idea of natural synthesis, of experimentation, thinking outside the box, if we must use the modern cliche. So the legacy is still there. It continues to evolve. It is continually reinvented in different ways. It's like a snowball that will only take new forms, but the core idea of seeking new frontiers, experimenting beyond convention, marrying the self with the other, to be able to find one's way in the world. I mean, these essences will always continue.
The movement was always such that every single person could make it their own. It was going to continue to evolve as the world changes, because it was never meant to be static. That is why we think it's a movement that can't stop.
Let us say natural synthesis is one huge masquerade, one huge experience. The masquerade is in motion, so you have to also go around it to be able to catch up with the experience and key in from whatever angle you're operating from. That is the way I see it.
So looking ahead, what do you see as the major trends or challenges facing young artists and art students of African art and their cultural heritage today and in the future on the global stage?
Looking ahead, looking at now, looking at the past, artists as individual entities have done so much, and we must commend individual efforts, private sector efforts, like which is where Peter Arre and his Pendulum Gallery pitched in. But you now ask what is government doing, or what are governments, successive governments in Nigeria doing? I would say next to nothing in terms of harnessing the powerful possibilities of the creative arts, encouraging creative enterprise. It does not exist. It does not happen. All the national government museums, Council for Arts and Culture, I don't know how many people they have helped. I don't know how many causes they have championed. I mean, helping the creative industries in such a way that you have a robust creative economy. There's no creative economy. We have tried as individual artists. We do not have any help. The Nigerian artist is more like an orphan child. We need more support. And you cannot create an enabling market without that kind of support. All the market is in Europe and America and all that. You can say, yes, auctions are coming, major exhibitions are happening in Lagos and all that, but we need to see more. We need to see more of that. They need to be very much consolidated than they now.
Do you think that the situation with the arts, as far as government is concerned, is the general thing that is happening? The provisions have been made, but they are just not utilized as they should. I mean, it's not like those provisions are not there. It's not like those departments and institutions have not been created. I mean, it could have been that they're not even in existence, but they are there, but they are not being utilized.
You have the institutions, and again, most times you have people who are not specialists in the area being appointed to key positions.
That could be a big factor.
Who have no background in art, who is not even a collector or even an anthropologist, is appointed a director general of an art disseminating institution and is put to National Council of Arts and Culture, and people are clapping. For the West African Economic Summit, a private gallery had been commissioned to organize a major exhibition, very beautiful exhibition. The president was there, Minister of Foreign Affairs, but I think it was only the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs that came in and had the conversation with the artists. When the president was coming, they said, "Oh, you have to leave." We said, "No, but we are the artists. We needed to be there and explain." They said, "No, you had to leave." We left. The president walked past, probably every other person walked past. Then you see the exhibition was just an appendage. It did not provide any basis for a discussion in the creative industries that could yield a viable creative economy. You have that kind of thing.
I do remember in the days of President Obasanjo, when he gave out awards, he did give out some awards in the art sector. Do you remember? I mean, I don't know what it counts for, but he gave out several awards. Because I know my father received an award at that time, some national award in Nigeria, and it was during Obasanjo's regime. I can't remember.
They will do that, and we must applaud them when they remember to. But it needs to be sustained. If you invite a number of pioneers, give them awards, honor them, fine. It's such a beautiful thing to do. But how do you create an enabling environment for their legacies to continue? If it's not created, it doesn't mean much, because
and that's the
somewhere it needs to be preserved.
Exactly. The so-called national collection is in disgrace completely, because I mean they're not properly kept. If you donated your work for the national collection, they don't bother to take care of it. For instance, I mean, I totally understand what you're saying. I'm just bringing out, playing the devil's advocate, and bringing some other aspects of small things that may have been done, but like you said, have never been sustained. And so you're saying that this is the major challenge that is facing young artists. And it's like it's getting worse, isn't it?
Yeah, it gets worse. It's not just the art sector. The other day, somebody called me and I said, "Which part of hell are you calling from?" He said, "Hell." I said, "Yes." I said, "We are living in hell. You have to let me." You mentioned the town. And I said, "Well, that is what it means." Because some of us I was born just before the end of the Civil War, and we saw a few things. Each time when I look back now, you say things in those days, things are difficult. We kept saying, I started work here in University of Nigeria, 2007 was my salary, and I could manage on that. So things are getting worse, not just for the arts, but for everybody.
Everything.
Art cannot operate outside the realities of its environment. So if politics, religion, economics, and all that have been bastardized, and you don't expect that art will do well. So it's just the same experience going around for you.
What do you say to young artists and art students?
Well, I would say to them two things. One is for your work, try to cultivate passion for your work. That is very, very important. You have to have the passion before the profit. That's what I tell most of my students. Then I would also give them the advice of Nnamdi, where he used to say, let your watchword be Surulere. Let their watchword be Surulere. The place in Lagos, what it means, patience as its reward. So I will tell them to hold on to Surulere and be patient, so that they can reap the rewards at the appropriate time.
Because why I'm asking this is that I do have feelers that we're not getting very from the new, much younger generation. What we're getting from Nigeria is actually very much more degraded than what is coming out of other parts of Africa, the art that's coming out today. Do you have anything to say about that?
Well, Well, I would say that we have very good art coming from here. Also, people experimenting, putting in their best, new vision, new techniques, trying to do old things in new way. It goes back to having the facilities and the will to project people, the right people, especially if it has to do with government. When it is government, you may be sure that people involved will want to bring in their own persons, their own people, whether they are qualified or not. But I must keep saying that the private galleries are trying and they are thriving. They're trying to promote new talents, and there's a limit to what they can do because you can't bring out everybody at the same time. People have to be discovered and tested and then brought on the world stage. A few galleries are doing that, but that doesn't rule out the fact that you have a lot of kabu things happening in terms of some artists who just feel that they have to feed, and you don't have to blame them because things have become so difficult that the easiest thing people are thinking of is how to get the next meal. And in some situations, if they have to kick quality and standards out of the window, who cares? The important thing is that they have food at the end of the day. So that is part of the reality, and we just have to, concede that.
Thank you so much, Professor Ikwuemesi. It's been a real pleasure to have you, and your candidness, your thoroughness. And now for the final, most important question. Imagine you are enjoying a cup of coffee in a specific place. Where is this location, and who would you like to be sitting with you sharing this perfect environment?
The perfect place will be my studio. I want to work. It's either I'm writing, I have so much I want to write about. So I try to write my life story in the form of a novel. I have so much in terms of reacting to the realities of Nigeria. So I would think that the most appropriate place you may find me in my graphically, thinking with my work, and also probably enjoying a cup of coffee, because a cup of coffee will be in my studio. Let me not mention who you may find me with.
Oh, we're interested to know who will be sitting with you in your studio.
Because
would it be a muse?
Well, it depends on what you mean by the muse, but talking about muse, I'm inspired by so many things at the same time. So I can't say it must be this person, it must be that person. At times it may be family that inspires, it may be friends, it may be reading a novel. I like to listen to music in a very quiet mood. Just listen to it and see what you can get out of it.
So I get a picture. I get a picture of you in your studio alone with your music, sipping your cup of coffee and maybe doing some work, or maybe reading, or maybe just reflecting. But it will be a lone moment for you.
Yeah, because when I work, it must be absolute quiet. If I don't play loud music, there must be music. I'll probably be singing something by myself, and that way it enables me to think deep and come out better on the canvas.
Thank you, Professor Ikwuemesi. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, dear listeners. Please listen to our episodes available on our website, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, and YouTube. Keep in touch with us for many more interesting episodes of Coffee and Uche-Okeke.